The silver gates of Zarkan Galactic Academy opened slowly as hundreds of alien students turned their eyes toward the arrival platform, their glowing eyes filled with curiosity because today a rare guest was coming, a human exchange student from Earth, a species most of them only knew from weak data reports and outdated records, and when the small shuttle landed, the crowd began to whisper with amusement and doubt, because the human that stepped out was not tall, not armored, and not frightening. He was just a normal boy named Adam Carter, wearing a simple academy uniform, his brown eyes calm, his posture relaxed, while around him stood towering reptilian warriors, floating energy beings, and metallic insect-like scholars, all much larger and more intimidating than him, and laughter slowly spread through the crowd as one alien student with sharp horns leaned toward his friend and said that humans were known to be fragile. Another added that humans could barely survive high gravity worlds, and soon the idea that this human was weak became the accepted truth even before he spoke a single word, while Adam walked forward silently, observing everything with quiet focus, not reacting to the mocking voices, because on Earth he had learned long ago that words meant nothing compared to actions, and inside the Academy Hall, the principal of Zarkan Academy, a tall blue-skinned being named Viral, watched the human carefully with ancient eyes that had seen hundreds of species rise and fall, and unlike the students, Viral did not laugh. Instead there was something thoughtful in his gaze, as if he sensed something hidden beneath the calm surface of this small human, but the teachers around him did not share his caution, one of them even saying aloud that this exchange program was a mistake because the human would not survive even a week in such a competitive environment. And Adam was soon guided to his assigned class where dozens of alien students stared openly at him. Some with curiosity, most with quiet disrespect, and as he sat down, a bulky stone-skinned student intentionally slammed his heavy arm on the desk to scare him, but Adam did not flinch. He simply looked at the student calmly, which only caused more laughter in the room because they thought he was too scared to react, and the instructor began the first lesson, explaining the Academy's survival training program, warning that many students failed and some even dropped out due to physical pressure. And again the whispers returned, all pointing toward Adam as the most likely to fail, yet he remained silent, listening, observing, storing every detail, because back on Earth he had trained under conditions that most of these aliens would never understand, though none of them knew that yet, and the day continued with tests of intelligence, reaction speed, and adaptability, where Adam performed well but not spectacularly, deliberately holding back, understanding that revealing too much too soon could be dangerous, and this only strengthened the belief that he was average and unimpressive, exactly what everyone expected from a human, until the final session of the day arrived, the physical adaptation chamber, a large metallic room designed to adjust gravity levels for endurance training, where students were tested under increasing gravitational pressure, and this was where things began to change, because as the students entered the chamber, the instructor announced that the gravity would be set to a standard level comfortable for most Academy species. But as the system activated, an unexpected error occurred deep within the chamber's control core, causing the gravity to spike far beyond safe levels, and within seconds, powerful alien bodies collapsed to the floor, students struggling to breathe, their limbs unable to move under the crushing force. Panic spreading quickly as even the instructor fell to one knee trying to regain control of the system, while alarms blared and emergency lights flashed red, and in the middle of the chaos, something unbelievable happened. Adam did not fall, he did not collapse, he did not panic. Instead he slowly straightened his back, adjusted his footing, and looked around at the fallen students with focused eyes, his body tense but steady, his breathing controlled, because to him, this level of gravity was not unbearable, it was familiar, it felt like home, because Earth's gravity had forged his muscles, his bones, his endurance. Since birth, and while others saw him as weak, his body was quietly enduring pressure that crushed beings twice his size, and step by step, Adam began to move across the chamber floor, each movement deliberate, each step heavy but controlled, as he reached the control panel and tried to manually override the system, remembering emergency procedures from his exchange training, while around him the students watched in disbelief, their laughter gone, replaced by confusion and fear, because the human they had mocked was the only one still standing, the only one still moving, and the instructor, barely conscious, looked up and saw Adam at the panel, eyes wide with shock, whispering that this should be impossible, that no human should be able to endure this level of pressure, yet there he was, pressing commands, forcing the system to respond, until finally the gravity slowly began to lower, the crushing force easing, students gasping for air as they regained movement, and silence filled the chamber as everyone slowly turned their eyes toward Adam, who stood quietly near the control panel, sweat on his brow but posture still strong, not seeking attention, not demanding praise, simply doing what he believed was necessary, and the door to the chamber slid open moments later as Principal Viral entered with emergency guards, his gaze immediately finding the human student. His expression unreadable but his mind racing, because now he understood what the others had failed to see. This human was not weak, this human was controlled, trained, disciplined, shaped by a world far harsher than any of these students could imagine, and as Adam walked past the silent crowd, no one laughed, no one whispered, because the truth had begun to settle deep into their minds. The human they thought was weak had just saved them all, and this was only the beginning. After the gravity chamber incident, the atmosphere inside Zarkan Galactic Academy changed in a way no one could ignore, because the same students who had laughed at Adam Carter now watched him with quiet uncertainty, their eyes following him wherever he walked through the massive halls, and though no one openly admitted it, fear had begun to replace mockery, because deep inside they knew they had seen something impossible. Yet pride is difficult to kill, and many alien students refused to believe that a human could truly be strong, convincing themselves that Adam had simply been lucky, that the system failure had created a situation that somehow favored his weak species, and this belief quickly spread, becoming a comfortable excuse for their wounded egos, while Adam himself remained calm, continuing his routine with the same quiet discipline, attending classes, studying alien languages, observing the behavior of different species, never once boasting about what he had done, which strangely frustrated the others even more, because they wanted him to either confirm their fears or prove their doubts, but he did neither. He simply existed, steady and unreadable, and soon the tension became so thick that it reached the instructors as well, especially Instructor Krell, a towering armored being known for his strict belief in physical dominance, who openly questioned whether Adam's survival in the chamber truly meant anything, and during a faculty meeting he suggested that, if the human truly possessed hidden strength, then he should be tested in a controlled public environment where no accidents, no system failures, and no excuses could exist, and this idea quickly spread through the academy, because many students wanted answers, some wanted proof, and others wanted the satisfaction of seeing the human finally fail, so within days, a formal announcement echoed through every hall and every dormitory, declaring that a public trial would be held in the central arena, where Adam Carter would face the Academy's official adaptive challenge course, a brutal sequence of tests designed to push even elite species to their limits, and when Adam heard the announcement, he showed no visible reaction, simply acknowledging the challenge with a slight nod, which confused many who expected fear, because in their minds, only a fool or a desperate being would accept such a test. But Adam had been trained on Earth to never back down from a challenge, especially when others depended on his performance, and on the day of the trial, the central arena filled with hundreds of students, teachers, and observers, their seats rising high into the air like massive stone waves, while floating drones recorded every angle for Academy archives, and in the center of the arena stood the adaptive course, a terrifying combination of shifting platforms, energy barriers, weight zones, speed corridors, and combat simulators, designed to test strength, balance, endurance, intelligence, and reaction time all at once, and whispers filled the air as Adam walked calmly onto the platform, his small human form looking almost lost in the massive space, while across the arena, elite students watched with folded arms, confident that no human could survive what they themselves struggled to complete, and Instructor Krell stepped forward, his voice booming across the arena as he announced the rules, stating clearly that Adam would receive no special treatment, no lowered difficulty, and no mercy, because this was the only way to prove whether the human deserved respect or ridicule, and when Adam simply replied that he understood, more laughter spread through the crowd, because they interpreted his calm as ignorance rather than confidence. But then the trial began, and the first phase activated, shifting platforms over a deep energy pit, where one wrong step would trigger a painful shock. And as the platforms moved unpredictably, many expected Adam to hesitate, yet he did not. He stepped forward with controlled precision, not rushing, not panicking, reading the rhythm of the movement, adapting with each step, his body moving smoothly despite the chaos beneath him, and when he reached the end of the first phase without falling once, the laughter began to fade, replaced by surprised silence, and the second phase activated, the weight zone, where gravity increased in waves, designed to crush weaker bodies and exhaust even the strong, and once again, the students leaned forward, expecting Adam to finally collapse, but instead they watched him grit his teeth and push forward, his steps slower now but still steady, his breathing controlled, his will unbroken, because compared to Earth's extreme military-style training environments, this pressure, though difficult, was not impossible, and as he exited the weight zone, sweat dripping from his brow, many students realized with growing discomfort that this was no longer luck, this was endurance, real and undeniable. And then came the third phase, the combat simulation, where energy constructs formed aggressive opponents based on the Academy's strongest species, and this was the phase where most participants failed, because the opponents adapted to the fighter's weaknesses in real time, yet Adam did something unexpected. He did not rush forward with aggression. He observed, he waited, he analyzed their patterns. And then he moved with sharp precision, dodging attacks, redirecting force, using their momentum against them, striking only when necessary, conserving energy, fighting smarter rather than harder, and the crowd watched in stunned silence as one by one, the energy constructs collapsed, unable to adapt to a fighting style that was based on patience, discipline, and calculated movement rather than brute strength, and by the time the final construct faded, the arena was no longer filled with laughter or whispers. It was filled with heavy silence, the kind that only appears when belief systems begin to crack, and as Adam stood there in the center of the arena, exhausted but upright, the truth became impossible to ignore. He had not just survived the trial, he had completed it, fully, fairly, and without any system failure to blame, and Instructor Krell stared at him with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect, because everything he believed about strength had just been challenged by a quiet human who refused to show off, refused to boast, and refused to break, and as the announcement echoed that Adam Carter had officially passed the adaptive course, a new emotion spread through the academy, something deeper than fear, something heavier than doubt, because now the question was no longer whether the human was weak, the question had become far more unsettling, how strong were humans really, and somewhere high above in the observation chamber, Principal Viril watched the scene with thoughtful eyes, already aware that this was only the beginning of something much larger than a simple student trial. After the public trial, Zarkin Galactic Academy no longer felt the same, because the human named Adam Carter was no longer invisible, no longer laughed at, no longer dismissed as weak. Instead, he had become a silent mystery that everyone wanted to understand, and this curiosity quickly turned into obsession for many students and teachers, especially those who could not accept that a human could outperform them without explanation, because if his strength had a reason, then maybe their pride could still survive. And so the questions began, whispered in corners, discussed in private study rooms, analyzed in digital archives, with many students searching for data about Earth and human biology, but what they found only confused them further, because the official records describe humans as average, adaptable, and fragile compared to many galactic species. Yet Adam had just proven the opposite in front of the entire academy, and this contradiction created tension that spread like electricity through the halls, while Adam himself continued his routine as if nothing had changed, waking early, training quietly, studying carefully, speaking only when necessary, never seeking attention, never explaining himself, which only made the mystery deeper, and among those watching him most closely was a sharp-minded alien student named Lyra, a member of a species known for intelligence rather than strength, who had been present during the gravity incident and the public trial, and, unlike others, she did not feel anger or jealousy, she felt curiosity, because patterns interested her more than pride, and she began to observe Adam from a distance, noting every detail of his behavior, the way he controlled his breathing, the way he conserved energy, the way he reacted calmly to pressure that caused others to panic, and slowly she began to form a theory that his strength was not accidental, not luck, and not unique, but rather the result of something deeper, something environmental, something cultural, something shaped by the world he came from. And while students whispered theories and teachers debated possibilities, Instructor Krell refused to let the matter rest, because his belief system had been shaken, and he demanded answers, so he requested official access to the galactic data archives about Earth, something few instructors had ever bothered to study in detail. And when he began reviewing the historical records, survival statistics, and environmental reports, he felt something unfamiliar tightening inside him, something close to unease, because Earth was not the gentle world he had imagined. Earth was brutal, its gravity heavier than most inhabited worlds, its climate unstable, its ecosystems competitive, its history filled with conflict, adaptation, and relentless survival. And the more he read, the more he began to understand that humans were not weak because they lacked power, they were strong because they were forced to become so just to exist, and this realization disturbed him deeply, because it meant that Adam was not an exception. Adam was simply a normal product of an extreme world, and as this information slowly spread among select faculty members, a new fear began to grow, not of Adam himself, but of the species he represented, because if one human student could endure academy trials with discipline and control, then what could trained human soldiers do? What could motivated human leaders achieve? What could an entire civilization shaped by harsh conditions become? And this question quietly reached Principal Viril, who spent long hours alone reviewing Adam's file, comparing his behavior to patterns he had seen across centuries of interspecies exchange, and what he saw was not arrogance, not aggression, but restraint, controlled power, the most dangerous kind, because it did not seek conflict yet was fully capable of surviving it. And while the faculty debated behind closed doors, the students continued their own form of investigation, some approaching Adam cautiously with questions, others attempting subtle tests of his patience, his intelligence, his emotional control, but Adam responded to all of them with the same calm presence, answering when necessary, remaining silent when not, never revealing more than he needed to, which only deepened both the respect and the unease around him. Because beings across the galaxy trusted what they could understand, and Adam had become something they could not easily define. And then one day, the tension finally reached a breaking point when the Academy announced the arrival of the Elite Combat Division, a group of advanced students trained for interspecies conflict resolution and high-level defense, individuals known across the Academy for their pride, their power, and their reputation, and among them was a warrior named Draxus, a towering figure from a species that valued dominance above all else, a being who had never lost a challenge, and had no interest in subtlety or patience. And when Draxus heard the stories about the human who had survived the gravity chamber and completed the adaptive course, he did not feel curiosity, he felt insult, because the idea that a small human could gain more attention than elite warriors was unacceptable to him, and without hesitation, he made his decision. He would challenge the human directly, publicly, and decisively, to prove once and for all that reputation built on rumors could be shattered by real power. And the moment this intention became known, the Academy buzzed with energy, because everyone understood what this meant. Draxus did not issue challenges unless he intended to dominate, and Adam did not seek conflict unless it was forced upon him, and yet the two were now on an inevitable path toward each other, while Adam remained unaware of the growing storm around him, continuing his training in the quiet exercise hall, moving through controlled routines, focusing on balance, breath, and awareness, the same habits that had kept him grounded since childhood, until Lyra finally approached him directly, breaking the distance she had maintained for so long, and with honest concern in her voice, she warned him that the elite warrior was watching him, that a public confrontation was coming, and for the first time since his arrival, Adam's expression changed, not with fear, but with understanding, because he had known from the beginning that proving strength would always attract challenge, and as he looked at the massive training arena in the distance, he realized that the test was no longer about survival, no longer about endurance, but about something deeper, something that could shape how the entire Academy, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would see humanity from this moment forward. And while the Academy slept that night under artificial stars, the tension remained awake, building silently, because everyone could feel it, the calm before something powerful, something unavoidable, something that would change everything again. The day of the duel arrived faster than anyone expected, and from the moment the artificial sun rose over Zarkan Galactic Academy, tension filled every corridor, every hall, every open space, because everyone knew that today the elite warrior Draxus would face the human named Adam Carter, and no one wanted to miss what could become the most unforgettable moment in Academy history. While floating screens across the campus repeated the official announcement that the duel would take place in the central arena under strict supervision, with safety protocols active but with full intensity allowed, which only made the excitement stronger, because this would not be a friendly test, this would be a battle of pride, reputation, and belief, and as students gathered in massive numbers, filling every seat, every balcony, and every observation level, whispers echoed like waves. Some confident that Draxus would crush the human easily, others unsure, and a few silently hoping that Adam would survive, because his quiet presence had begun to change how many of them saw strength itself. And when Adam finally entered the arena, he did not arrive with dramatic movement or loud confidence. He simply walked forward calmly, his posture relaxed, his eyes focused, as if this moment was just another challenge rather than a life-defining event, which confused many who expected fear. While on the opposite side of the arena, the massive gates opened with heavy force, and Draxus stepped into view. His armored body covered in ritual markings, his powerful limbs moving with absolute dominance, his presence alone causing the ground to vibrate slightly, and the crowd reacted instantly, cheering, shouting, calling his name with respect and excitement, because he represented everything they believed about power, size, and superiority. And when Draxus looked across the arena at the small human standing alone, a deep mocking sound escaped his throat, because to him this duel already felt decided. And as the instructors activated the combat field and energy barriers surrounded the arena, Instructor Krell stepped forward to announce the rules, his voice steady but serious, stating clearly that this duel would end when one participant was unable to continue, and that both had agreed to these terms. And when Adam simply nodded in confirmation, many in the crowd leaned forward, waiting for fear that never came. And when Draxus cracked his massive knuckles and took a step forward, the duel began, and the first movement came like thunder, because Draxus launched himself across the arena with terrifying speed, his heavy fist aimed directly at Adam's position, a strike powerful enough to shatter reinforced training walls, and gasps filled the arena as everyone expected the human to be destroyed in a single moment. Yet in the last possible second, Adam moved, not with panic, not with wild reaction, but with controlled precision, stepping just enough to let the attack pass by him. The air pressure from the strike still powerful enough to push him back slightly, but not enough to break his balance, and the crowd fell silent, because what they had just seen was not luck, it was skill, and Draxus did not pause, because pride does not allow hesitation, and he attacked again, faster, stronger, using both strength and speed now, each strike designed to overwhelm, to dominate, to end the duel quickly, yet each time Adam moved, dodging, redirecting, stepping away at the perfect moment, never wasting energy, never counterattacking unnecessarily, as if he was studying the warrior rather than fighting him, and this behavior began to frustrate Draxus, because he was used to opponents breaking, panicking, or attacking wildly under his pressure, but the human did none of these things, and slowly, the crowd began to notice something strange, something uncomfortable, something they had never expected to see. The massive elite warrior was beginning to look clumsy, while the small human was beginning to look in control, and as the duel continued, Adam finally made his first deliberate move, not an attack of power, but a simple shift of position that caused Draxus to overextend, and when the warrior tried to recover, Adam used his own momentum against him, guiding the movement, twisting slightly, forcing the massive body off balance, and for the first time in his life, Draxus stumbled, not falling completely, but enough that the crowd gasped in shock, because no one had ever seen him lose control like that before, and anger flashed through Draxus's eyes as he roared loudly, abandoning strategy in favor of raw aggression, unleashing everything he had in a desperate attempt to reclaim dominance, and the arena shook under the force of his attacks, energy barriers flickering, instructors watching closely, ready to intervene if things went too far, yet Adam remained calm, his movements efficient, his focus unbroken, and when the moment finally came, it was not dramatic, not flashy, not violent, it was simple and precise, because as Draxus charged one final time with everything he had left, Adam stepped forward instead of away, placing himself dangerously close, and in one smooth motion, he shifted his weight, redirected the force, and used a controlled technique to bring the massive warrior down to the ground with a heavy impact that echoed across the arena, and silence followed. Not the kind of silence born from fear, but the kind born from complete disbelief, because the impossible had just happened. The human had defeated the elite warrior, not with superior size, not with superior power, but with control, discipline, and understanding, and Draxus lay on the arena floor, breathing heavily, not unconscious, not injured beyond recovery, but utterly defeated, staring upward in confusion as if his entire understanding of strength had just been shattered. And Adam stood a short distance away, not celebrating, not raising his arms, not claiming victory, simply waiting calmly for the instructors to end the duel, and when Instructor Krell finally announced that the match was over and that Adam Carter had won, the words felt unreal, yet undeniable, and slowly, one by one, students began to stand, not to cheer wildly, but to show respect, because something fundamental had shifted in their minds, something deeper than excitement, something closer to realization, and high above in the observation chamber, Principal Viral watched the scene with deep intensity, understanding fully that this moment would not remain inside academy walls, because news like this never stayed contained, and as communication signals began to activate across distant systems, recording drones transmitting data to off-world networks, it became clear that the galaxy itself was about to learn the same lesson the Academy had just learned, that humans were not weak, that humans were not to be underestimated, and that this quiet student from Earth had just become a symbol of something far larger than himself. After the duel, nothing at Zarkan Galactic Academy felt the same anymore, because the victory of the human named Adam Carter did not feel like a simple win, it felt like the beginning of a dangerous realization spreading through every mind present, and as students slowly returned to their dorms, silence followed them instead of laughter, because the truth they had witnessed was too heavy to ignore, while instructors gathered in private chambers, speaking in low tones, reviewing combat recordings again and again, trying to understand how a human with no visible enhancements had defeated an elite warrior who represented years of advanced training, and the more they analyzed, the more uncomfortable they became, because the answer was not hidden technology, not cheating, not luck, but discipline, adaptability, and experience shaped by a harsh world, and this realization forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. And while Adam returned to his daily routine with the same quiet humility, others around him began to change their behavior. Some students now stepped aside when he passed, not out of fear but respect, others watched him with admiration, and a few with deep uncertainty, because admiration for strength often comes with fear of what that strength could become, and Lyra, who had observed Adam since the beginning, now understood that he was not special because he was stronger than his species, but because he was a clear example of what his species truly was, and this thought unsettled her more than his physical performance ever had, because if Adam was ordinary by human standards, then the galaxy had made a terrible mistake by labeling humans as weak, and this question began to echo quietly through the Academy: what kind of world produces beings like this as normal? And as curiosity grew, so did the desire for answers, leading several instructors to begin a deeper official review of Earth's records, opening archives that had not been accessed in generations, studying human history, environment, psychology, and survival patterns, and what they discovered was not comforting, because Earth was revealed as a planet of extremes, unpredictable weather, dangerous predators, natural disasters, constant competition for resources, and long cycles of conflict that had shaped human behavior across centuries. And these conditions had not destroyed humanity, they had sharpened it, forcing humans to develop resilience, creativity, endurance, and emotional control just to survive everyday life. And the more the instructors learned, the clearer it became that Adam's behavior was not extraordinary by human standards. It was simply the result of normal upbringing in a brutal environment, and this truth slowly reached Principal Viral, who spent long hours alone reviewing the same data, watching recordings of Adam's calm reactions under pressure, comparing them to documented human survival cases, disaster responses, and battlefield behavior, and what he saw was consistency, not anomaly, and this consistency led him to a conclusion that he did not speak aloud but felt deeply, that humans were not a weak species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy, they were a strong species choosing to appear peaceful, and this distinction was far more dangerous than open aggression, because controlled power can change history quietly. And while the faculty processed this unsettling realization, rumors began to spread beyond the Academy walls, because the duel had been recorded, and recordings had been shared, and curiosity across nearby systems grew rapidly, with other institutions, observers, and even minor political groups beginning to request more information about the human exchange student, and the Academy suddenly found itself at the center of unexpected attention, something it was not prepared to handle, and Adam remained unaware of how far his influence was spreading, because he continued to live simply, training in the early mornings, studying during the day, resting quietly at night, never seeking attention, never trying to become a symbol, and yet symbols are not created by intention, they are created by perception, and Adam had become exactly that, a living example of a misunderstood species, and as the days passed, the atmosphere around him grew heavier, not with hostility, but with expectation, because now everyone wanted to see what he would do next, how he would respond, what limits he truly had, and this constant silent pressure would have broken many, yet Adam endured it with the same calm control he had shown since the beginning, and this endurance only deepened the unease among those who understood the truth, because they realized that humans were not strong only in body, they were strong in mind, in patience, in emotional stability, and this combination made them unpredictable in the most dangerous way. And while the Academy tried to return to normal routine, something had already shifted beneath the surface, because respect had replaced mockery, curiosity had replaced ignorance, and fear had replaced comfort, and far beyond the Academy, faint signals of attention began to move through larger networks, larger powers, larger authorities, all beginning to ask the same question, quietly at first, then with growing urgency. If this is what one normal human student looks like, then what is humanity truly capable of? And as Adam stood alone in the training hall one evening, practicing slow, controlled movements under the soft artificial lights, unaware of the thoughts he had planted across countless minds, the camera drones above him recorded silently, transmitting data to distant locations he would never see, because his story was no longer only his own, it had begun to belong to something much larger, something that was watching, learning, and preparing to respond. As the Academy tried to return to routine, a strange unease slowly settled over Zarkan Galactic Academy, because while the students pretended that life had become normal again, the air itself felt different, heavier, as if something unseen was moving just beyond their awareness, and Adam Carter sensed it before anyone else did, not because of special power, but because on Earth he had learned to recognize patterns of danger long before danger revealed itself, and it began with small details that others ignored: security drones passing the same hallway twice, communication delays during system checks, brief flickers in the light barriers that protected the outer sections of the campus, and while instructors dismissed these as minor technical issues, Adam quietly observed them with growing concern, because experience had taught him that true threats rarely arrived loudly, they arrived silently, hidden behind normality. And as days passed, these strange irregularities increased, yet no official alarms were triggered, and this false calm became more dangerous than open chaos, because it allowed everyone to lower their guard, everyone except Adam, who began adjusting his training, focusing more on awareness, movement through complex spaces, and quick response under uncertainty, habits that had been deeply shaped by years of preparation on Earth, and Lyra noticed the change in him immediately, noticing that he was more alert, more observant, more focused on surroundings. Rather than personal improvement, and when she quietly asked him what was wrong, Adam did not offer dramatic explanations. He simply told her that something felt off, that systems do not fail repeatedly without reason, and though she trusted logic more than instinct, she could not ignore the seriousness in his voice, and so she began to investigate through her own strengths, using Academy data terminals, studying internal security reports, searching for patterns in system behavior, and what she discovered unsettled her deeply, because the disturbances were not random, they were structured, deliberate, almost as if someone was carefully probing the Academy's defenses without triggering major alerts, and this discovery led her to Principal Viral, who listened silently as she presented the data, and though his expression remained calm, his mind immediately understood the implications. Because probing behavior meant preparation, and preparation meant intention, and intention rarely arrived without action, and so Viral quietly ordered increased surveillance without public announcement, not wanting to create panic. Yet even with additional security, the true threat remained hidden, moving carefully, intelligently, patiently, as if whoever was behind it understood the Academy systems almost as well as those who built them, and this realization created a chilling thought, that the enemy might not be external, that someone inside the network might be guiding this unseen force. And while the administration worked quietly to identify the source, Adam continued noticing more signs: a locked door found slightly open, a storage unit's access logs altered, a restricted corridor briefly unguarded at exactly the wrong moment, all small things, easy to ignore, yet together forming a pattern that spoke of coordination, not coincidence. And one night, while most of the Academy slept under the gentle artificial stars, Adam found himself awake in the quiet training hall, moving through slow routines, listening to the rhythm of the building, and it was there that he heard something he was not meant to hear, a faint electronic pulse beneath the normal hum of the structure, a signal that did not belong to the Academy's standard systems, and instead of reporting it immediately, Adam followed it, moving carefully through side corridors, avoiding camera blind spots instinctively, following the faint trail until it led him near the outer maintenance sector, an area rarely visited by students, and from a distance, he saw it, a brief flicker of foreign energy, almost invisible, almost hidden, but real, and in that moment, he understood something important. The Academy was being studied, mapped, prepared for something, and whoever was doing it did not want to be discovered yet, and instead of confronting it directly, Adam chose caution, quietly memorizing everything he had seen, every location, every irregularity, because survival taught him that knowledge was often more powerful than immediate action. And when he returned to his dorm, his mind did not rest, because now the tension that had filled the Academy finally had a shape, even if it did not yet have a name, and the next morning, everything changed, because during the first class session, without warning, without alarms, without obvious cause, the internal communication network went silent, screens flickered, doors locked unexpectedly, and the protective energy field around the Academy pulsed unevenly, causing confusion to spread instantly among students and instructors alike, and though no attack had begun, panic rose quickly, because systems did not fail this completely without reason, and as chaos threatened to take control, Adam stood calmly in the center of it, watching, listening, understanding that this was not the attack itself, this was the test before the attack, the moment when the hidden enemy confirmed how the Academy would react under pressure. And as he looked around at the frightened faces of students who once believed they were superior, Adam realized with sharp clarity that when the true threat finally revealed itself, they would not be ready, but he would be, because Earth had prepared him for moments exactly like this, moments where calm mattered more than strength, awareness mattered more than speed, and choice mattered more than fear, and somewhere deep within the Academy's vast structure, unseen by students, unseen by instructors, unseen even by advanced surveillance, something shifted, something activated, something that had been waiting patiently for the right moment, and though no one heard it, though no one saw it, the truth had already arrived. The Academy was no longer just being watched, it was being targeted. The moment the Academy systems failed completely, true fear finally took hold of Zarkan Galactic Academy, because what had started as small errors now became full collapse, lights flickering violently, security doors sealing without command, transport lifts freezing between levels, and communication panels turning dark across every hall. And students who once felt safe inside the powerful structure now found themselves trapped in confusion, their confidence shattered as instructors tried to restore control but found their commands useless against a system that no longer listened. And in the middle of this chaos, Adam Carter moved with calm purpose, because panic was familiar to him, and while others froze or shouted, he observed, calculated, and adapted, quickly realizing that this was no random failure. This was a coordinated shutdown designed to weaken the academy before something worse arrived. And as he passed through crowded corridors, he saw fear in the faces of beings who had once laughed at him, and for the first time, many of them looked at him not with doubt, not with mockery, but with hope, because they remembered who had remained standing when gravity had crushed them, who had endured when challenges overwhelmed them, and now they silently waited to see what he would do, while Adam did not stop to comfort, did not stop to explain. He simply acted, guiding small groups toward open spaces, helping those who could not move easily, forcing jammed doors open. With effort, his body straining under the resistance but his will unbroken, and slowly, without anyone announcing it, he became the center of movement in the chaos, the point others began to follow instinctively, because leadership does not require permission, it is recognized in moments of crisis, and as the minutes passed, a new sound echoed through the academy, distant at first, almost lost beneath alarms, but growing clearer with every heartbeat, a low vibration, unnatural, foreign, not part of the academy's structure, and those who heard it felt instinctive dread, because it did not sound like a malfunction, it sounded like arrival, and Adam heard it too, his expression tightening slightly, because he had recognized similar sounds before, in training simulations, in emergency drills, in lessons that taught him how invasions begin, quietly, methodically, without mercy, and as the vibration grew stronger, parts of the outer wall began to shimmer, not with defensive energy, but with distortion, as if space itself was being cut open, and in one terrifying moment, reality tore apart near the outer sectors, revealing dark armored figures emerging through controlled rifts, their movements synchronized, their presence cold, efficient, and clearly hostile, and the first alarms of true invasion finally activated, but they came too late, because the attackers were already inside, already moving, already disabling remaining defenses with precision that showed deep knowledge of the academy's design, and panic exploded instantly, students fleeing in every direction, instructors attempting to organize defenses, but confusion ruled stronger than authority, because they had never trained for this kind of coordinated internal breach, and while others panicked, Adam's mind became sharp, focused, cold, because crisis forced clarity, and he quickly understood the attacker's pattern. They were not here to destroy randomly, they were here to reach something specific, something deep within the academy, something valuable, and that meant time mattered, direction mattered, and someone needed to slow them down, even if no one else could, and without dramatic words, without public declaration, Adam made his choice, because survival training on Earth had taught him one hard truth: when others cannot act, someone must, even if that someone stands alone, and so while groups fled toward safer intersections, Adam moved in the opposite direction, toward the source of the breach, toward the sound of danger, toward the path no one else wanted to take, moving through dark corridors, stepping over broken panels, avoiding collapsing structures, his senses alert to every sound, every movement, every shadow, and when he finally reached a junction near the outer sector, he saw them clearly for the first time, 3 of the attackers moving with mechanical precision, their armor dark, their weapons unfamiliar, their presence radiating threat, and Adam did not hesitate. Because hesitation costs lives, and using the environment instead of strength, he moved silently, using shadows, broken walls, and structural supports to close distance without being detected, and when the moment came, he did not attack with rage, he acted with calculation, disabling the first attacker by redirecting its movement into unstable debris, using its own momentum against it, causing its armored form to collapse beneath falling structure, then moving instantly to the second, using a tool pulled from the environment, striking critical points with precision rather than power, not trying to overpower but to disrupt, confuse, delay, and though the third attacker reacted quickly, Adam adapted just as fast, using narrow corridors to limit its movement, forcing it into positions where its advanced weapons became less effective, turning the battlefield into something familiar, something controlled, something survivable, and though each movement pushed his body harder, though each breath grew heavier, he did not stop, because he understood the true purpose of his actions. He was not here to win, he was here to buy time, time for instructors to regroup, time for students to escape, time for the academy to understand the threat, and far behind him, unknown to Adam, cameras that still functioned in emergency mode recorded everything, transmitting fragmented footage to central systems, showing instructors and security teams something they could hardly believe: the human student moving through darkness, standing between the academy and the attackers, alone, unannounced, unsupported, and as the conflict intensified, explosions echoed through distant corridors, structural damage increased, and for those watching the feeds, fear began to grow not only for the academy, but for the human himself, because no one had sent him, no one had ordered him, and yet he had gone anyway. And then suddenly, the footage cut, The final camera went dark, the last signal lost in static, leaving only silence, uncertainty, and a terrible question hanging over everyone who had begun to understand what he truly meant to them. Had the human survived, or had the one being who stood when others could not finally fallen alone in the dark? When the dust finally settled in Zarkan Galactic Academy, the silence was heavier than any alarm could ever create, because the chaos that had erupted in the outer sectors left every student and instructor shaken, unsure of what had just occurred, and as emergency systems slowly rebooted, the first glimpses of the aftermath revealed something almost unbelievable, because in the corridors filled with broken panels, flickering lights, and scattered equipment, the human student Adam Carter stood. Unharmed, calm, and in complete control, surveying the area as if nothing extraordinary had happened, and a collective gasp swept through the academy when instructors and remaining students finally saw him, because he had not only survived alone against the hidden attackers, he had neutralized them in a way that caused minimal damage and ensured no lives were lost, and while many tried to process what they were seeing, Adam began guiding groups of shaken students and exhausted instructors towards safe zones, moving swiftly but without panic, demonstrating the same quiet leadership he had shown since his first day, and as he spoke calmly, giving clear instructions, everyone began to understand the depth of his abilities, not just physical, but mental, emotional, and strategic, because he had anticipated threats, acted decisively, and maintained composure under pressure that would have destroyed most seasoned warriors, and soon the injured and exhausted gathered in the central arena where the full extent of the attack became clear, with damaged walls, flickering barriers, and disabled systems marking the path of the invaders, and it was there that Principal Viral finally stepped forward, his expression unreadable at first, but his eyes filled with something the students had never seen, a mixture of awe, relief, and deep recognition, because he realized that Adam had not only prevented disaster, he had shown the Academy something it had never understood before, the true potential of humanity, and as the principal spoke, his voice echoing through the hall, he described events in calm, formal words, yet every sentence carried the weight of revelation, explaining how the human had acted alone, how he had controlled his fear, how he had used intelligence, precision, and restraint to overcome enemies far stronger and better equipped than himself, and when the students listened, their previous doubts and biases dissolved, replaced by awe and a new respect that no words could easily express, and Lyra, who had observed Adam from the very beginning, now understood fully that everything she had suspected was true, that humans were not only physically resilient, but mentally disciplined, emotionally controlled, and capable of facing threats that other species could barely comprehend, and the truth became unavoidable, reaching beyond the Academy walls as distant communications detected the anomaly, because the Academy had been a test site, observed by multiple nearby systems, and recordings of Adam's actions were already being analyzed by officials and scientists who had never believed humans could operate with such efficiency and calm under extreme conditions, and while many of the aliens tried to rationalize his abilities, attributing them to luck, unusual training, or technology, the evidence was clear, because Adam had used no enhancements, no advanced weaponry, no hidden assistance, only his body, mind, and instinct refined by his environment and upbringing, and the revelation sparked something new across the Academy, an understanding that humans were not what they had been told. They were far more capable than anyone had imagined, not only survivors but strategic thinkers, disciplined fighters, and leaders who could act decisively when others hesitated, and as news spread, even Draxus, the elite warrior defeated by Adam weeks earlier, was summoned to witness the truth, forced to see the human who had not only endured, but excelled under conditions designed to crush him, and as Draxus stood silently, his pride wounded but his respect growing, he realized that everything he had believed about strength needed revision, because Adam had proven that control, patience, and intelligence could surpass brute force, and while the Academy adjusted to the reality of the threat they had just faced and the lesson they had learned, Adam did not seek praise. He did not demand recognition. He simply continued moving calmly among students, checking their condition, guiding repairs, and preparing the Academy for what might come next, because he knew that this attack was not random, it was deliberate, and the enemy had studied them carefully, waiting for a moment to strike, and Adam had already learned from experience that preparation was more important than reaction. And as Principal Viral looked at him one last time before leaving the arena to organize broader response efforts, he whispered quietly to himself, acknowledging a truth that many across the galaxy would soon have to accept, that humans were not weak, that they were not naive, and that they should never be underestimated, and in that quiet moment, Adam understood fully that his actions had revealed more than personal skill. They had revealed the hidden strength of an entire species, a species that others had mocked without understanding, a species that could endure, adapt, and overcome, and as the students and faculty began to restore the academy systems, repair barriers, and recover from the shock, a subtle shift had already taken place, because the galaxy's perception of humans had begun to change, quietly at first, but inevitably, and as Adam looked toward the distant stars visible through the academy's upper windows, he felt no pride, only awareness, because this was only the beginning of a much larger challenge. A challenge that would test not just himself, but the entire human race. And while the academy celebrated survival and order returned, a silent understanding hung in the air, the understanding that the truth had been revealed, that humanity was far stronger than anyone had believed, and that the galaxy would never forget the actions of the human who stood alone and changed everything. After the attack on Zarkin Galactic Academy, the story of Adam Carter spread faster than anyone could have predicted, because recordings of his calm, precise, and fearless actions were transmitted across nearby systems, reaching not only other academies but military outposts, scientific institutions, and even political councils, and as these messages circulated, the perception of humanity began to shift dramatically, because beings who had once dismissed humans as weak, fragile, or unremarkable now questioned everything they thought they knew, and while the academy struggled to return to normal, distant leaders debated quietly in their chambers, reviewing footage that showed a small human student standing alone against advanced alien attackers, neutralizing them without weapons or enhancements, and surviving situations that elite warriors would have failed, and the more they watched, the more uneasy they became. Because Adam had not only survived, he had acted strategically, leading himself and protecting others, demonstrating skills that combined intelligence, patience, discipline, and raw endurance, and as this realization sank in, the whispers began across diplomatic channels, spreading first as rumors, then as discussions, then as formal analysis, because humans were no longer just a species to be studied, they were a force to be reckoned with, and as attention grew, galactic media outlets picked up the story, broadcasting it widely with emphasis on the incredible courage, skill, and calm of a single human who had changed the course of an event that many thought could have ended in disaster, and soon social networks across different species were filled with debates, admiration, and fear, because if one human could accomplish so much alone, what could humanity achieve as a civilization? And these discussions did not remain theoretical for long, because alien strategists and scholars began analyzing human behavior, environmental adaptation, and survival strategies, realizing that Earth's gravity, climate, and competitive history had created beings capable of endurance, critical thinking, and emotional control far beyond what most species considered normal, and as these analyses continued, humans were no longer mocked, no longer underestimated, and no longer ignored. Instead, they were being seen as unpredictable, intelligent, and dangerous in a way that demanded respect. And back at the academy, Adam's presence alone became symbolic, because students who had once doubted him now sought guidance, instructors referred to his actions as models of strategy, and even elite warriors who had challenged him openly admitted in private that they had underestimated something they could not yet fully understand. And as the academy slowly rebuilt damaged systems, reinforced barriers, and trained students to be alert to future threats, the lesson of Adam's actions became embedded into daily routine, a constant reminder that humans were capable of far more than appearances suggested, and far beyond the academy, political entities began reconsidering alliances, defense protocols, and communication strategies, because they now knew that humans were not only survivors, they were efficient, adaptable, and capable of acting decisively under pressure, and this realization quietly began to shift power balances, because those who had assumed humans were weak could no longer take them lightly, and while some species began cautiously reaching out to establish new relations with humanity, others withdrew slightly, unsure whether to approach or to observe from a distance, because caution had replaced confidence, and curiosity had replaced ignorance, and as the galaxy watched, the story of Adam Carter became more than a single incident, it became a symbol of what humanity represented, a species underestimated for centuries now stepping into the awareness of all others, and though Adam himself remained unaware of the full scope of attention he had attracted, he continued his calm routine at the academy, training, studying, and observing, knowing instinctively that the galaxy would watch, analyze, and respond, and while he acted quietly, every movement he made reinforced the lesson that had begun to spread far beyond the academy walls, that humans were not ordinary, humans were strong, humans were capable, and humans could not be ignored. And as this perception solidified, some leaders took extraordinary measures, sharing intelligence, updating defenses, and issuing directives to treat humans with caution, because they now realized that humanity's reputation had changed forever, from a minor species easily dismissed to a force of unknown potential, and across the galaxy, conversations changed tone, alliances reconsidered, and strategies altered, all because of the calm, disciplined actions of a single human student who had shown that strength is more than size, more than weapons, more than aggression, that true strength includes patience, observation, and understanding, and as these lessons spread, humanity quietly moved from being underestimated to being feared and respected, and the galaxy itself began to whisper a new truth, a truth no one could deny, that humans were a species capable of shaping events far beyond what anyone had imagined, and while the full implications of this revelation would unfold over years, one thing was certain in that moment: Adam Carter had changed the perception of all species present, and through his actions, he had begun to change the perception of humanity everywhere. After the events at Zarkin Galactic Academy, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, because the story of Adam Carter had spread far beyond the Academy walls, reaching distant planets, trading stations, political councils, and military outposts, and everywhere it arrived, beings stopped to consider what had happened, because a single human had not only survived impossible challenges but had acted with intelligence, patience, and control that no one had expected, and while discussions, analyses, and debates continued across countless systems, the Galactic Council itself, an assembly of the most powerful species in known space, finally decided that humanity must be addressed directly, because no longer could they rely on assumptions, rumors, or second-hand accounts, and so an unprecedented invitation was sent to Earth, requesting a human representative to speak before the Council, to clarify humanity's intentions, capabilities, and place in the galaxy, and the message caused waves of speculation, some hopeful, some fearful, because no one knew what to expect. Yet Adam Carter was chosen quietly by Earth authorities, not because he sought glory, not because he craved recognition, but because he had already proven the essence of what humanity could accomplish under pressure, and as the transport prepared to leave for the Council chamber orbiting the neutral star system, Adam remained calm, methodical, reviewing everything he had learned about galactic diplomacy, threat assessment, and survival strategy, because he understood that this meeting would not be a performance, it would be a statement, and statements in the galaxy carry consequences, subtle or violent, depending on perception, and when he arrived at the council hall, the enormity of the chamber struck him, massive enough to contain thousands of delegates, with platforms rising high into the artificial sky, the energy fields shimmering above, and the representatives of dozens of species observing him carefully, measuring every movement, every blink, every breath, because humans were an unknown, and the unknown always commands attention, and as Adam stepped forward to the center of the chamber, silence fell so deep that it felt as if the stars themselves had stopped, and he looked at the council, a diverse group of beings whose combined experience spanned millennia, whose power controlled fleets, economies, and knowledge across entire sectors. Yet in their eyes, he saw uncertainty, curiosity, and, quietly, fear, because even without aggression, humans had proven they could act decisively and unpredictably, and when he spoke, his voice was calm, clear, measured, yet carried authority beyond his years, because the words were simple but precise. We come in peace. We do not seek conquest. We do not wish war. But do not mistake kindness for weakness. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans survive. And when necessary, humans act. Be assured that any attempt to provoke us will be met with the full measure of our capability. This is not a threat. It is a truth, and as the words echoed through the council hall, the delegates reacted differently, some nodding in cautious respect, some whispering in shock, some stepping back in disbelief, because the statement carried not arrogance, not prideful aggression, but the quiet strength of a species that knew itself and would not allow others to misjudge it, and the silence that followed was profound, because words alone rarely carry this kind of weight, and the council spent long moments processing, consulting each other, comparing notes, and realizing that the human before them was no ordinary representative. He was the embodiment of humanity's hidden power, discipline, and endurance, and even the oldest members of the council, who had seen countless conflicts and civilizations rise and fall, understood that underestimating humans could be a mistake too costly to ignore. And while the meeting continued, Adam listened carefully to questions, answered them calmly, avoided exaggeration, and maintained his presence with quiet authority, demonstrating once again that human strength was not just physical but strategic, emotional, and intellectual, and with each answer, the delegates' perception shifted, from doubt to respect, from mockery to acknowledgement, and when the final session ended, the council reached an unprecedented consensus, issuing a formal statement recognizing humanity as a capable and disciplined species, deserving of respect, caution, and consideration, and though Adam had done nothing more than speak the truth, the effect was monumental, because for the first time, humans were no longer just a distant planet, a rumor, a curiosity. They were now a species whose reputation demanded serious attention, careful planning, and acknowledgement in galactic matters, and as Adam returned to his transport, the weight of responsibility was clear. Because he had represented more than himself, more than his academy, more than his planet, he had represented the potential of an entire species that had long been underestimated, and the galaxy would never view humanity the same way again. And while many leaders began revising policies, strengthening communication, and reassessing potential alliances, Adam quietly reflected on what had been accomplished, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with awareness, understanding that humanity's journey in the galaxy had only begun, and that the respect earned today must be matched by vigilance, discipline, and readiness for the challenges ahead. And as the stars of the Council system faded behind the transport's window, Adam knew that this was only the first step in a much longer path. But for the first time, the galaxy understood a truth that had been hidden too long. Humans were not weak, humans were not ordinary, humans were a force of endurance, intelligence, and quiet power. And the message had been sent clearly, permanently, and undeniably, forever changing the way the galaxy would see humanity from that moment onward.